Welcome, everyone, to my show, Let's Go There. Today is my season finale of my pilot program. We made it to 6th episode. Woo! I'm so excited, but today we are talking about money. My good friend, Leilani Langdon, her debt-free journey. And so I think many of you are going to just be inspired and just hear her amazing journey. We're going to go all the way there. And so I'm about to introduce my good friend Leilani of almost 20 years. Come on my show. Hey girl, how are you doing?
Oh, I'm so good. And I'm just so honored for you to have me on the show. I mean, I'm just excited and so proud of you. And I'm just happy to be here.
Thanks for saying yes. You know, one of my first memories of you is, girl, we were on an all-girls drum team back in college.
You did not go there?
We were the tenor drum.
Oh my gosh. You know, there's some memories that I've just like completely done away with. And I think that was one of them.
Queen Beats. Like, we had the shirt. We went traveling to Alabama. Like, we were the real deal.
We did compete, right? Like with our little moves, like our little transitions.
Right. Those were good times. What an honor. I love that we get to do life still almost with our kids.
I know.
You have 3 kids already and I have 3 kids and we're both doing shows. Let's just get all the way in. Like, what are you doing for life? What's going on? Like, what's up with you these days?
Well, yes. Well, it's funny. So I'm a social worker by trade and was working as the director of operations at a church. And God asked me to leave my job. So I left my job, had a baby, and I am a stay-at-home mom, but I'm leaning into a passion project that God has put on my heart, which is What's Your Story, where we just share inspiring stories to inspire others to share their own. So it's been amazing. So I've just been leaning into whatever God has and fully committing to that. So
one thing I love is a couple months ago, we were talking and we're like, God is putting something in our heart and something in your heart about starting a show. And what I love is, even though we're doing similar things, like there was no ounce of competition. We were just like, I'm going to be your number one cheerleader. What do you want? And you were there for me along the journey for being here today. And so I want to just say thank you for being like a cheerleader on the journey for me, and also I've been cheering you down because your show is amazing and you're about to get ready to do season 2. And so thank you for just being that friend that no competition, girl. We keep it just real.
Same for you. You definitely were super supportive and a big part of the reason why I even started, right? Because you were speaking over my life, like, listen, stop letting fear keep you from doing what you believe God is asking you to do. And I was like, okay. So yeah, we need each other. And so, you know, man, there's a space for all of us, for us to do what God wants us to do. So I'm just excited for you and your journey.
Thank you so much. So we're going to get right into your journey and the conversation about money. Like, what was your relationship with money growing up, or the conversation in your house about money?
Man, you know, growing up, there wasn't a lot of conversation until I went to high school and got my first job. Prior to that, I mean, I don't remember being without, but I just knew growing up that, you know, there wasn't a lot of delaying gratification, so to speak. So it was just like, we want something, we're going to get it. And it wasn't until I had my first job that my mom was like, okay, now you need to budget and you need to have a checking account. And I'm like, what's a budget and why do we budget? But that was the extent of the conversation. It was just like, hey, you set aside money for this, you know, for your phone or for your clothing or for food. And that's it. There was no other further conversation beyond that point. And so I just did my little budget, you know, for my phone at that time. I think that was the extent of my bills, you know. And Nextel. Girl, I had a Nextel. We had a BlackBerry, but before that, we had the Nokia, right? The little you know, it was like a flip, like dumb phone. It was it was unlimited. You didn't have unlimited minutes, so anybody that texted us had to text after 9, so we could get the conversation going. But that was the extent, right? The extent of that was just, hey, you have to budget, but never really an explanation why or what was I going to do for money? I knew I had to tithe because we were part of the church. And so, but that was the extent. But I just knew that we weren't wealthy. We didn't have a lot of money, but we could go on vacations and we did things we wanted to do. And it wasn't until I got to college that I started to recognize that I had a problem with money.
So what was the indication? Like, how did you know you had a problem with money?
Well, I had a spending problem. I was spending too much money. I was shopping every weekend in college. I'm a college student. I had a lot of jobs, but I also had a lot of credit cards. And, I was using my credit cards to finance my new car and clothes. And I remember this one moment in particular where I came home with all these bags from Forever 21 and I don't remember the other stores, maybe H&M. And I got a credit card bill and I think I owed like $450, right? And I had, in that moment in time, I wasn't married. I had like $1.50 in my account. Okay. And my bank account was $1.50. Okay. I couldn't even get myself like a milkshake or anything. Like, it was just that bad. And I realized in that moment, like, I just felt this overwhelming sense of panic. Like, I have overdone this. Like, I have just been spending as if I have resources and I don't. And that was the beginning of this moment of feeling completely helpless around money and recognizing that money had a hold on me. And I had to humbly, I was in a situation where somebody saw me and I was really distraught about this, right? Because I couldn't pay the bills. And they were like, well, how can I help you? And I just started crying. I was like, I don't know. I can't pay these credit card bills. And, they blessed me financially to be able to pay those off. They didn't have to. It was a gift, but it was a God moment where I had to kind of see. I was face to face with being a slave to consumerism, right? To convincing myself that I needed things that I really didn't need. And so it was the first time when I was in college that I think I was in graduate school that I realized, like, wow, money really is a God for me, right? It's coming above other things and it's weighing me down.
So would you say you try to keep up with the Joneses? Was that your type of, like, all the college students? Like, why did you think you need to shop? Because I remember going to your closet and you had like tags still on the clothes.
I did. You know what? I think so there's part of that, right? There's part of that sense, but to be honest, I've come to realize that it was therapy for me, and retail therapy is not therapy. Okay. So, it's one thing to have money and want to go buy something, right? But it's another thing to use it as a self-soothing mechanism, right? As a coping mechanism.
Yeah.
And just like food, right? It just became a way for me to not face and deal with some of the emotional things that I needed to deal with, right? Some of the gaps, some of the areas in my life that I hadn't allowed God to heal yet. And so I used it because it gave me this like natural high, right? Like buying something, going to the store and getting, a cute outfit. And it was just literally like this emotional high that I would get, and I would feel great. And then I'd get home and I'd hang everything up, and then I'd feel this like, right, this emptiness and loneliness and this sense of like sadness and like, this can't be it. So then what would I do? I'd go back and go shopping because it would give me that natural hit, right? So almost like a drug. It's crazy, but it was very much like a drug addiction where I needed it in order to feel good about myself as well. I think it also had to do a lot with, portraying an image of who I am and who I want to be, but not being that internally, you know what I mean? Or recognizing that what matters most is what's happening on the inside. And
when your bank account's not reflecting what you like, people like, did you feel like people thought you had it always going on? Like, like, how's it going on? Like, and you kind of had to keep up with that along the way. Even though you're home probably crying, like, how am I gonna pay my bills? You're like, you kind of wipe that off and then you go up and like keep it moving.
Absolutely. It was a sense of like validation. I want to feel good enough. And this is one of the ways that it feeds that fear of not being good enough, and it's a wrong vehicle, it's a wrong vehicle by which to get that or to feel good about yourself. But it was where I was at that time in college.
So what was the determining factor? Let's lead up to like,
mm-hmm.
What determined your factor, and like how did that affect getting into now a relationship with somebody? Like what did that look like? Like you have debt? Did you come into a marriage, the relationship?
Yes.
What did it look like?
So my husband and I were dating for a while. When we got engaged, you start to have those conversations, right?
Mm-hmm.
All the conversations, sex, money, family, kids, whatever, right? Yeah. And so it came to finances, and I was still to the point where I was looking forward to that first paycheck. We were just graduating, I was about to graduate college, and I was like, I can't wait for my first real paycheck, right? Because up to that point, I've been working just, college jobs. I'm like, my first professional paycheck, I'm about to get that. I'm about to get that fancy $200, $300 bag and shoes. And I remember telling, my husband was like, so I'm thinking we should join our money. And I'm like, join our money? No. Like, my money's my money. Your money's your money. And we can share bills or whatever. But that conversation really brought about the differences in how we were raised, right? That the idea that, for him, he grew up in a family who's very, money conscious and spent what they could. If they didn't have it, they didn't spend it. Whereas for me, even if we didn't have it, we would put it on credit and eventually pay it, right? And there was no stewardship in that regard. And that was the first time I was faced with the realization, like, wait a second, my finances, it's kind of coming to haunt me again, this idea that this is an area where I really need to surrender to God, because my husband is coming into the marriage with zero debt. Okay. His parents did what they had to do. They provided the finances for him to be able to do that. I didn't have that luxury. Part of that was, my dad lost his job sophomore year in college, and I had to do loans. Yeah. But that's what you're taught, right? Like, oh, you can't afford it, just get a loan, right? Yeah. And so when we're sitting there looking at our finances, it was another humbling moment. I had to tell him, like, all the debt that we paid off, was mine. Okay. Wow. The $115,000 that we paid off was all mine. Mine. So talk about guilt, shame, right? Talk about feeling completely embarrassed, and having to kind of humble myself and be like, no, we're going to do it. Right. And to have my husband say, like, hey, this isn't your debt, it's our debt. Right. Come on. We're coming together. So we are now going to work to take care of that. And so those conversations pre-marriage, during the engagement process, really started to kind of shift the way that I was coming into marriage, looking at money. I knew that I was going to struggle because it wasn't something that was naturally easy for me. And I'm also more short-sighted. My husband is more future, he's more visionary. He's more thinking about what's going to happen 10 years from now. I'm like, what's going to happen tomorrow, right? And so, but that conversation, I remember I think we were driving to Canada, actually, and we had the conversation about money and my view and how thwarted it was in light of coming into something that was both of us. And so that was the catalyst that was like, okay, something has to change, when I told him how much I owed. So
how was his response? Was he pretty like, okay, we can do this? Like, why did you get here? Like, did he question you?
I don't remember him questioning me. If you know my husband, he's pretty even keel, and he was pretty gracious. I think, I could probably see him swallowing hard, like taking a big gulp, like, okay, right? Because think about, him having no debt, right? Like, he has no debt, and he's coming into that he already has that freedom of not having anything weighing him down. And I'm like, just kidding. Here's $100,000, So, but he was very gracious. And it wasn't an issue, right? It was just like, this is what it was. However, right before we got married, I think it never left his mind. He's like, we have $115,000 in that. We have $115,000 in that. What are we going to do? And I think that's when his gift to see beyond the now really stepped in, because he started to then say, okay, well, God, what do we do with this? Right? This is the woman you've called me to marry. What do we do with this? And now, we were living in Berrien Springs, and we'll get to that. But, that's kind of what started our journey towards really taking a look at finances.
So what was your strategy? Like how did you start heading into that? Did you start before you got married, after the wedding? Like when did you begin the journey of, we're going to tackle this $150,000 journey?
So it was right before the wedding. Adrian came across, he was driving and he heard Dave Ramsey's radio station, and he didn't know who he was, but he was talking about getting out of debt, and people were screaming like, we're debt free, and sharing their stories of people paying off all these crazy amounts of money in short periods of time. And he was like, Leilani, you need to listen to this. So I listened to it, and I just got excited because I was just inspired. And so we decided that to get his book and to start implementing his principles right away. We're starting with the wedding. So we decided that we would not take on any debt for the wedding. So whatever money we would have, cash, is what we would use to have a wedding, no matter what that would mean for the day. And so that is what kind of started it. So we started pre-wedding, but then once we got married, we had to do the fun job of sitting down and now budgeting together. And for the first 3 months, that was one of the hardest things we had to do, because you're combining two lives, we're budgeting, right? And so it's like, wait, there's a level of letting go and relinquishing control that is really difficult, right? Especially when there's someone else who's telling you what they think is a good idea with the work and the money that you're bringing in, right?
Yeah.
It's really difficult. And so we started right before the wedding, but it wasn't until after we got married that we really sat down and said, okay, here's the game plan. So we had spreadsheets, and we just kind of took a really hard look at all of our finances, itemized, and said, okay, here's what we can do. If we really sit down and we just pour everything we have, live on less than we make, just tackle this, we can be debt free. And what does that look like? And I think the questions we started to answer was, what legacy do we want to leave? Right? We come from a generation. Well, I'll speak for myself, right? I come from a generation that's not thinking particularly about what legacy do I want to leave, right? It's about, the goal was the American dream, right? Like, you get married, you finish high school. If you go to college, fantastic, right? But that's the extent, right? And so it was these questions I really had to grapple with, like, well, what do I want to leave my kids? What kind of generational changes do we want to make as a result of this journey we're about to go on? And that was crazy, but it was so necessary for us to get on the same page, because we knew that if we didn't get on the same page for this, we wouldn't have accomplished the goal, because it would have been a constant tension and a fight towards that goal.
Wow. So you started the wedding, and then what was I know you went to Dave Ramsey, but then what did you did you just save all your money? You lived off of nothing? Like, did you start cutting out things? Were you not buying things? Like, what? Did you start eating beans and rice? Like, like, what did you have to, what was the weight of the sacrifice?
Oh my gosh. There was so much sacrifice. So we initially started by living on less than we made. So we identified what our combined income was, which at the time we lived in Michigan. Cost of living was low, which means salaries were low. Plus, the university I worked at, it's pretty much mission work. So we were making I think combined at the time, this was in 2008, we were making, I think, a combined $57,000, which is insane. Okay.
Wow.
It's just crazy that we were making that little of money in terms of a combined income. Right. Yeah. And we said, okay, we're just going to make decisions that the average person is not willing to make. Right. So we're just going to sit down and, okay, we're not upgrading our phones. So I think we had like iPhone 3s for the longest time. Right? Like everybody was moving on up, but we still had, a little, but we never upgraded our phones. We decided we didn't upgrade our cars, right? To the point, I'll share this story. There was a point in time with one of our vehicles that so the battery died. Nobody knows to this day what happened to the battery, but the battery would not charge at all. It would just not charge. The car would run as long as the car was on, it would run. But as soon as you turn the car off, the car would die. So it got to the point where at every stop, I would have to get out of the car, lift up the hood, unhook the battery, close the hood, and go about my business. When I came back to go home, I would have to open the hood, hook back the battery, and go home, right?
Wow.
And that type of sacrifice where someone else, and trust me, there were many days where I cried in that car, like, I hate this. Why are we doing this? God, is this really worth it? I'm just gonna, I think there was one day I was like, I called Adrian, I was like, I'm just gonna go to the dealership. You can come with me or not, but I'm about to get a new car, okay? Because it was just so stressful. Yeah. And, but there was always that reminder that this is what we were supposed to be doing. But that was one of the sacrifices. We had to say no when a lot of people were saying yes. So there were a lot of times where there were weddings happening overseas, of people that were really close. And a few of those really hurt us, right? Because they were people that mattered to us dearly, but we had to say no because we just could not deviate from that. Mm-hmm. We knew that if we gave into that it would start us all over. And really, here's the thing, right? It's not just a numbers game. It wasn't just a numbers game. It was a psychological, right? We were trying to change behavior. And when you're trying to change behavior, right? It's not everything is going to be logical. You have to put in the work. You have to have the discipline. You have to be consistent, even when it's hard, because that's what was going to change the way that we saw money collectively and forever, so that our children can now have a healthy perspective on finances, right? But things like that. I remember our first apartment. It was okay. It was a nice apartment, but it was a lot less than we would have spent if I had my choice. But there were a lot of times where things would go wrong in the apartment. And I remember this one time I came home and our tub was filled with termites. It was black with termites. It had, I don't know what happened. And I remember throwing another adult tantrum and just saying I'm moving. And Adrian is like, babe, we have goals. Here's what our goals are. Right. And so things like that, we just made decisions to live on less and make certain sacrifices that the average person wouldn't make. And we definitely did rice and beans, right? We cut our eating out budget. And it was hard. But
did you feel like you were missing out with your friends? Did you feel like you were watching everyone enjoy life and you guys were 2 steps behind everybody, even though you're really ahead, but
right. So yeah, for me, it was harder. Adrian is very much if he set something in his mind, he's going to do it. Yeah. For me, comparison was a big problem because you're absolutely right. So one of the things that we decided to do was, if somebody invites us out to eat, for example, and we don't have any more eating out money. So that was the other thing. We paid cash for everything. So we didn't use debit cards. We cut up all our credit cards. And so if my little cash envelope was empty in the eating out budget, if somebody asked us to go out, we'd go out. But then I would say, oh, we're good. We don't need to eat. We'll just get a water because that's free, right? Thanks. So we came to a place where we could still fellowship, even if, and there was always that person that's like, yo, y'all good? You want? I'm like, no, we're good. We're completely fine, right?
Let's stop there. I want to put a pin in that. That's powerful. I think a lot of times we think when people invite us out to eat, we have to be eating this big meal. But why are we eating out? The first reason why we're eating out is for the fellowship, not about the food. Together.
Yes.
It's not about the food. It's about having good conversation, laughing, the stories, the experience. And I think we get focused on, oh my gosh, I have to have money to go eat out, but let's just get water in the park. Like,
Yes.
do you know what I mean? Like with a lemon. Like if that's the
Absolutely.
focus is community and not the food, I think we get caught up
Yes.
that we have to be a part of that piece of food piece versus the
Absolutely.
goal really is we want to hang out and talk.
Yes. We want to connect. And that was a huge lesson that I've learned through all this, is the value of experiences, right? Like, you're absolutely right. I don't need to own something. I don't need to pay for something in order to connect with you, right? In order to have a great time together. And so I think it did that, right? It really just helped us go like, okay, we can still have an amazing time, laugh, and have memories forever that didn't require any money. I mean, we were doing date nights at home, and just acting a fool, but just having so much fun. And we had more fun than we probably would have had going to a movie and to dinner, right? Because we had to be creative. We had to be intentional. And that's the thing that this journey, I didn't see that at first, but it really caused us to be super focused on intentionality and just being focused,
So how long was this journey? Like, was it 1 year, 2 years? Like, what was the timeline with this journey?
So we started in 2008, and we started just throwing money at these loans. And I remember us getting to the point where every $10,000, we had a huge thermometer in our bedroom that we would like cross off every time we paid $1,000 off or whatever. And every $10,000 we would celebrate. We'd do something small, whether that was like get ice cream or, just to kind of, girl, right. The 99-cent McDonald's ice cream. Okay. But I remember the first time we got to the place where we only had $69,000 left. Okay. And we were so excited because when you go from 115, I don't remember the exact number, but 115,000 to 69,000, it's a huge feat. Right. And so it's funny because the whole journey was 5 years. In 2013, we paid off our debt the summer of 2013. And it's funny because my son was born in the summer of 2013. And I remember leading into my firstborn. So I remember leading into that, being pregnant, and Adrian and I going, oh my gosh, what are we going to do? We're so close. I used to have the magnet numbers that the kids use, right? You put on the fridge. And I literally started putting our amounts. So every time we would dump a lump sum, I would change the amount on the fridge. So it was always in the front of our mind. And I remember getting pregnant. And I believe at that point we only had, I would say, like $30,000 left. And we were just like pumped. We had all this momentum. I got pregnant and I'm like, no, because when you get pregnant, right, anything can happen. It's just unexpected. And so you need to save up some money just in case or whatever. And I remember Adrian saying, like, you know what, like, we have been on this journey and I believe that this is what we're supposed to do. We're supposed to finish this off. So let's go. So through my pregnancy, listen, when I tell you, I want to say this because I think it's so powerful. One of the major reasons when we talked about the idea of what legacy we wanted to leave and what vision we had for our family, we said to ourselves, we never want to have something in our lives by choice that we could use as an excuse to stop us from doing God's will. Right. Wow. And we knew that at any point in time, God can ask us to pick up and go somewhere. Right. That's just the type of life that we've lived. And when you have Sally Mae and Navient and whoever your loan person is, you're right, knocking at your door, it's not that maybe you won't move, but you're going to be more hesitant, right? You're going to, when God told us to, a few years ago, God was like, told Adrian to quit his job. We would have never, you know what I mean? That would have been such a difficult decision because you have all of these student loans to pay, right? Or these whatever, right? Whatever loans or debt. And so we never wanted it to we didn't want to be slave to lender anymore. We did not want to live in bondage to money. We wanted to be free so that if God said pick up and go, we could pick up and go. And not have to worry about how this was going to happen and how we were going to meet this bill and that bill and pay that off. But so we got momentum. Money was coming in. That's another thing. Money was coming in from anywhere. When you decide to honor God, when you decide to surrender something to God that he's asking you to surrender, listen, you never have to worry about provision. When I tell you, like, our salary kept increasing every year. Like we just kept getting raises from different places. Adrian switched jobs. We started getting random checks that we wouldn't like. I just remember this one time we got a $2,000 check in the mail, and we're like, "Where's this from?" And it was from
Wow.
some random thing that had happened 2 years before, and they were just now getting around to it. But it was what we needed in order to kind of continue the momentum. And so money just kept coming from anywhere. We had the momentum, and within the 9 months. So prior to me getting pregnant, we had paid off what's 115 minus 30. I'm not a math person, but what 90? Yeah, about whatever, right? It took us about 4.5 years to pay off $90,000, and within 9 months we had paid off 30-something thousand plus. Like the momentum was we were just on fire at that point. I had my son, and I think a month or two later we finally got the letter saying, hey, you are debt free. Like you have paid your loans in full. You are done.
Wow.
Okay. And it was the most freeing experience I have ever had. It was just it was just so powerful to finally be able to say, like, I'm free. This is no longer a weight burdening my shoulders. It's no longer something I have to carry. I can now just live life.
What do you think is some of people's barriers to be committed for that long? Is it because they're either if they're alone or with a significant other that they're both not on the same page? Is it their mindset? What are the things you think are the barriers for people to actually make that big step?
So I think it's a combination, right? Everybody's so different. I think it's our perception of money. I think it's our mindset, right? I think there's a level of discipline and consistency and hard work and difficult days that you are going to endure.
And
tears. Okay.
Screaming,
like
all of it.
I cried many a tears, wanting to give up. There were times where I was like, forget this, like, this isn't worth it. Because it was hard. It was just hard to really and truly deny yourself, right? Like, so the delayed gratification is the thing, right? We don't know, and I say we, right? But like, we struggle to delay gratification for ourselves. We struggle to say ourselves, no, I'm not going to get that right now. Right. We live in a culture where if I want it, I can have it. And I think it's a combination, I think at the heart of it, money controls it fuels a lot of the things in our spirits that feel good, right? It makes me feel powerful if I have money and I can get things, whether I have money or not, right? Because you don't need to necessarily have money in order to have things.
It's true.
It makes you feel powerful, right? It fuels this sense of self-worth. And so I think it's a combination of things for people.
So did you feel like you had to hustle, like do side hustles? Because I find people feel like they have to burn themselves out for the goal. Did you ever take a break saying, you know what, like, this is hard. Can we take a step back? Or are we like doing every side job that came to you? Like, were you like at night, not sleeping at night? Do you know what I mean? I think at one point, were you selling like refurbished furniture or something? Like, I don't remember like something you guys were doing back then.
That's so funny. So we didn't necessarily have a lot of side hustles, but we did take on other as opportunities would come. And that's the other thing, right? Like, as we were moving in faith to meet this goal, we did have a lot of other opportunities that kind of came. So I remember in the summers, I just so happened to be able to have the summers off. So I took on extra work, at another agency to make extra money. I worked. So I did have some other opportunities, but you know what? I can say that I never felt like I lost sleep over meeting this goal. It was difficult. And I definitely had, some tears, but we never deviated, right? And to be honest, a lot of that is because of my husband, because he is he is tunnel vision. If he sets his mind towards something, there is nothing that can stop him. And so that also, having that helpmate helped me pull me back whenever I was feeling really stuck. Now, I've seen people pay off their debts who are single, right? And it's just about, what are you willing to, which is what the Ram says, right? Are you willing to I can't even,
Like
I just forgot it. Yes, live like no one else so that later you can live like no one else, right?
Yes.
And so it's about what are you willing to postpone in order to actually have a greater reward later. So yeah.
Wow, 4.5 years, 5 years paying off $115,000 of debt, tears, like that's amazing. So did you end up, so after you paid off your debt, what was next? Because this is the thing, you can pay off debt and you're back to zero. Like you can go right back into like get a new car, you can get other things, even though you paid off the debt.
Yes.
What was next after that journey? Because it's like, it's short-lived, but like it's hurrah, but then what's next?
Right. So once we paid off the debt, we did go a little crazy, right? In the sense that we're like, oh my gosh, we have no debt. Let's just go spend money. That was more me. My husband was like, you need to bring it back because you're doing the most. But so we gave ourselves some grace. And we said for the next month that we would enjoy some of the things that maybe we didn't get to enjoy as much. So we took a vacation. We went out to eat. There's things that we just enjoyed. And then we said, okay, at this date, we're going to get back on. And really and truly, it was all about continuing, right? As if you want to attain anything worth having, you have to stay consistent. You have to continue to take steps towards that. You have to continue to have goals set. And so our next goal, so our strategy was, we followed the Dave Ramsey plan pretty to the T. The next step was to build an emergency fund, right? Our 3 to 6 month emergency fund. And life happened. We had to get a new car. Finally, thank you, Jesus. We had to get a new car, right? I had another baby. So life was happening. So 3 to 6 months. And then from there, it was just now, okay, let's pay off our house and let's
go back to that. So when you say 3 to 6 months, like, did you again have to go back to sacrifice again? Like after 5 years, you had a 1 month party to go back to sacrificing again for 3 to 6 months.
Yeah, absolutely. So, but the benefit is because our behavior was shifting, right? My mindset was no longer the same. I now had, I used to be in a place where I actually had to restrict myself from going into stores, clothing stores. I could not, like, it was a thing. I could not go into a clothing store because my natural inclination was to just shop, right? Like even if I didn't have enough money, I would just fill up my cart with things because it would fuel that thing again in me. And so I learned how to navigate that, right? It's okay. So what do I really need this? And I don't know how many of us actually really ask ourselves that question when we're shopping, right? Do I really need this? Is this thing unique enough that it's worth me spending that money on? And so by the time that we get out of debt, we have shifted our mindset on money, right? Being able to pay off this, at this point, I was 30? I was 31, and I'm just like, I'm 31 years old. I've paid off $100 and something thousand. Like I could do anything, right? So you feel it was a different sense of power. So before it was money, buying things gave me a sense of power that was false, right? Because it was temporary. It was a sense of, oh, you have power because you're relying on this thing to make you feel good instead of saying, no, I have power because I have the ability and the power in Christ to be able to accomplish whatever I set out to accomplish. And so it was different. So it wasn't as difficult. There were times where I was like, oh, it is hard to kind of restrict again, but we were a lot less restrictive, right? We're trying to get out of debt. We were super tight doing all these things. This way, we upgraded to an iPhone 6, right? We instead of, we did what happens is when you get more money, the more money you get, the more lifestyle you try to match it instead of saying like, no. The more money, now I have a bigger gap to play with. So let's actually use that for our advantage. So our lifestyle went up a little bit, but not too much to the point where we, weren't able to kind of do. So, yeah.
So you get to 3 to 6 months. Then what's next after that? You're got the money in the bank, 3 to 6 months. You upgraded your car, have a little extra little iPhone,
Yes.
So what's next after that?
So we bought a home. Right. And the goal is to pay it off. And from there, then you start doing college funds. Now you have a little extra money, you throwing money to college funds. And we started to build a college fund for our kids. I started having more kids. So, that. And then you start investing. And a huge part of it was giving too, right? It was like, now we gave before, right? Because if God asked us to give, we were going to give, even if we were on this journey. Yeah. But being able to really bless somebody's life without the guilt of thinking about the fact that I'm taking from my family's plate, right? I'm taking food from my family to give to someone else. Like I could just freely bless somebody with whatever we wanted to bless them with. And so we were able to start giving as much as we wanted to. And so, but at that point, we actually, God called us out to Illinois. We were living in Michigan. God called us out to Illinois. So we put everything on pause, right? And so we had our 3 to 6 months. We bought a new house. And so we're on track to pay off this house. My husband's goal is by the time we turn 40, which is what time I turn 40, which is 3 years. So we are still pushing towards paying off our house in 2.5 to 3 years. And we've only lived here for 4 years. So we've been just, again, right? Like just that intensity of like, here's what we're doing. But God is good as life has continued. Obviously our salary has increased and we're making more money, and we have now freedom to be able to do things without as much restriction and still invest and still do college fund and still. Yeah.
So let's talk about that freedom that like legit you walked away from your job literally a couple months ago.
Oh yes.
That is freedom. That is freedom. You have 3 kids, a husband, you're trying to pay down your mortgage to be like literally legit debt free from no lender because and then you have 3 to 6 months in your bank, plus you have investments that you were able to walk. Was that a hard decision to walk away from your job because of like your goals also for like paying off your house?
So leaving my job was not difficult in the sense of like leaving, like, okay, no, guys asked me to leave it. I'm going to leave it. I think I'm human, right? We're human, and the natural fears come up, right? For provision. It's still the same, right? And it's crazy because, we are at a debt where, we're in a good place. And even still, it's like, okay, God, but what if, what if he loses the job? And then what if we use up our emergency fund? What if, it's just, and so for me, it was still an exercise in faith. It was still having to pivot from walking in fear to walking in faith, right? And being able to say, no, like this life, these things can fade away, right? My husband could lose his job. We can lose our house. I mean, there's just nothing guaranteed in this life. There's nothing certain except for, my relationship with God and God. So, at the end of the day, leaving my job was something that caused some fear because of the unknown and because of the loss of control. And it was just a reminder to say, no, I need to continue to depend on Christ completely and only, because throughout this journey towards relinquishing and surrendering my desire and my need to have money and to have this taken care of, and for certainty, it was easy for me to kind of take over, right? And say, okay, God, you could, like, I got it from here. Like, you could go to the back seat,
Yeah.
And he's constantly reminded me, like, no, Leilani, you depend on me, and I need you to depend on me for everything, even for your finances, And so it's a constant act of surrender. But no, I mean, quitting my job, it affords us an opportunity to do something like that, and not be in a position where, or to be able to say, it's the reason we did it, right? It's like, okay, God asked us to do this. We can walk in it and know that there's no weight, right? There's no weight of what if, or what, how are we going to pay these bills, So
that's amazing. Like, that's absolutely amazing, inspiring. Do you guys teach your kids about money? Is that like now something you're instilling in them? Because how old are your kids now?
So Jonathan's 8, Sanaya's 6, she's 5, she's gonna be 6, and then Elijah's 8 months.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, absolutely. They know about money. They know whenever they get money, they know they have to save some, they have to spend some, and they have to give some. So
Mm-hmm.
it's that. So as they get older, they know like, okay, there's value in making sure that we are investing, but that we're also
Mm-hmm.
giving, right? And what does that look like? And so just pouring that into them and legacy. So are paying off. So as we've been trying to pay off our house, we have a, big on charts. So I have a little house chart in my bedroom with all these squares every time we pay off a certain
Yeah.
amount. And so they're part of that process. They know that we're paying off our house. And so every time we drop a lump sum, they color in a box, right? And Jonathan the other day, he got some birthday money. He was like, "Papi, I wanna give you this money so you can put down it on the house, right?"
Aww.
I think it was like $10, right? But it was just it
It's
was
so
just
cute.
so sweet, right? That his intention and his thought, he was aware enough to say, I'm part of something that we're
Mm.
doing. And so yeah, absolutely. We teach our kids about money and giving back. And yeah, it's been good.
Wow. So what are some encouragement you would give people that are on the journey or
Mhm.
it's people that want it, like they're scared to start their journey, or people that are on the journey that are like, I don't know if I can make it anymore, or maybe that's your story that it's impossible for me because like I can't
Mhm.
do it, I'm alone, I don't have a spouse, or just all the negativity around it or the fear factor. What would you encourage
Yeah.
someone that is not like 5 years is a long time to be committed,
It is.
you
It really
know?
is. Woo! Yes, yes. It is a long time. But you know what? I think what I would say is that um the things, those what ifs, right? Or the I can't, they're all lies, right? They're all
Mm,
lies that we tell ourselves believing that we can't, when in reality you can, right? Um,
mm,
you may not have a certain level of income, but you can make certain cuts, right? You can make certain
mm.
decisions. You can make your own coffee at home instead of going to Starbucks, right? Or
Yeah.
Tim Hortons or wherever you are, right? You can decide not to keep up with the Joneses in a specific area of your life. And it doesn't have to be this massive jump into like, oh, I'm gonna sell my house and I'm gonna sell everything so I can get out of
Yeah.
debt. You can do that, but it always often starts with one small step at a time. And I think we all have what it takes to take that one small step, right? Even if you just start with a budget, right? You starting with sitting down and facing your
Mm.
fear of
Come
facing your
on.
finances, right? A lot of
Come
people,
on.
I'm surprised at how many people don't actually have never sat down to really see what they have, right? Like that is a thing.
Yeah.
Like a lot of
Yeah.
people had just don't, they just live life, right? They pay their bills, but they have never sat down. So just taking that one step is a step towards freedom, right? Is a step towards ownership and not letting money control you, but you controlling it, right? You having power over it, so that you can have that freedom. So I would encourage people to not let fear be the thing that keeps you from experiencing the freedom that is on the other side, which is there's peace, there's contentment, there's satisfaction, and all the lessons that you learn and what God wants to do through you. So that's what I would say. It's take it once. The fastest way to eat an elephant is one bite at a time.
One
Okay,
bite at a time. Yes.
You gotta start with
Yes.
the first bite. So
Yeah.
yeah.
So also, just last question I want to ask you: what did this do to your prayer life? What did this do with your
Mm,
relationship with Christ? What did this do with your, yeah, let's just go
mm,
there. Like, what did that do with your prayer life and your faith
yeah.
walk journey?
Yeah, you know what? It truly drew me closer to Christ, and it also talk about some things I needed to heal. It really
Mm,
put me face to face with some demons that I hadn't addressed, which is
mm,
crazy because you would think, well, money, it doesn't have anything to do with that, but at the end of the day, right? I was using money as a way to cover up some of the things
mm,
that I wasn't allowing Him to transform in me, right?
mm,
And it upped my prayer life. It allowed me to be more in tune with what God wanted from me, because money was no longer a distraction, right? It was something that he was allowing me to have direction over. And it just it was crazy. I remember, I it's crazy because we still have these moments in us, um of our old self, right? So to speak, right? I've grown, I've developed, but there's always that part of me that likes to spend, right?
Yeah,
So
yeah.
that's never gonna go away, right? So the worst thing that happened was Amazon delivering to your house in Prime, but whatever. The point.
Yes.
So I remember this one time when God asked us to leave Berrien Springs, right? And it was right at the end of our debt-free journey, and He was like, "This chapter of your life is done. I'm calling you into something new." And I remember we needed to sell our house, and I set the amount. I was like, "All right, I want to set it." My realtor was like, "You should set it for this amount," and I was like, "I want to get money out of it, so can we like set it like a bit, a little bit higher?" And she's like, "We can go for it, but we'll see what happens." And I remember having a dream. I remember having a dream where I was leaving a home, not this particular home, but I was leaving an apartment or a home. And right before I left from the door, I left the bag, like a to-go bag, right on the inside of the door. And I closed the door and I left. And halfway down the hill, as I'm walking away from this house, I feel God was like, in the dream, He said, "Leilani, you have to go back and get that bag. Go back and get the bag." So I went back and get the bag, and He's like, "Never go back." Like literally just never go back. And when I woke up, I was like, "Well, what does that mean, God?" And so in the process of praying and asking God for what that meant, He showed me, He's like, "Leilani, you're still relying on what you can do and how much money you can gain, right? Your dependence is still on the things that you have and how you've been able to manage it versus on me. And so I need you to let it go." And the next day, we got in an offer for considerably less than I wanted. And I felt God say, "Let it go. Let it go. It's not about the money. It's not about what you can get out of it. It's about me, and it's about you learning to truly depend on me completely for provision, not just financial, but emotional, physical, mental." And so it really did transform me in a way that not having the journey probably wouldn't have. And I'd be probably in a worse off scenario as a result. So, yeah.
Well, Leilani, thank you so much for sharing your vulnerability. I mean, a lot of people are not willing to share their number because they're embarrassed by it. So I thank you for I think a lot of people are very happy that you were just transparent, because there's nothing like hearing the story, but not people tell the details. You're like, how can I learn? You're just trying to still keep it back. But thank you for just keeping it real.
Absolutely.
I appreciate your friendship. I appreciate who you are. I appreciate what you're serving, your community, your children. Like, you're doing so much being who you are. And I know God is we're just starting. Like, even though we've been doing this for almost 20 years, we're just getting started in the journey with what God has. And I think you have always been willing to say yes, even though you might fight and do tantrums. You're always willing to say yes for the journey. And it's been amazing to see you struggle, but also see the other side of what God has done. I've seen you grow, mature. I've seen you just really be inspiration to so many people. And I want to just thank you for just being you, because you are the thing that really are changing lives. And thank you for starting your show, because I love to hear the stories. And I cannot wait for second season. So thank you so much for walking in faith and walking in your calling and walking what God has for you. So make sure, if you have not, follow Leilani on her Instagram or on her YouTube channel as What's Your Story, because she has phenomenal stories on her YouTube channel, and check it out. And so I will catch you backstage, and we will chat. So thank you again.
Thank you, girl. Thank you for having me. I appreciate you.
No worries. Thank you. Guys, that's it. Oh my gosh, $115,000 of debt. Phenomenal, inspiring. I know many of you are probably on this journey of relationship with money, but I believe just hearing Leilani's story that you can do it. And so I just want to say it's been amazing 6 weeks doing my show. We did it. This is the last episode for season 1. I just want to shout out my son. My son is the one that made the instrumental for my little trailer thing. And so way to go, Noah. I'm so grateful for you. And so guys, we're going to come back in the fall with season 2. It's going to be better, more more conversations that we're going to have with real people that are relevant and just inspiring. So if you have not already, like the channel, subscribe, share with your friends, show them in the replay, and we will see you at season 2, guys.